Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at adding sound to processing projects. So now that there is an actual sound file library that's part of processing, it makes it pretty easy. Before we had to use third-party libraries and they weren't always as supported. So the sound file library that comes with processing is robust enough for most purposes. And if you want to dig deeper into it, you can do that. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go get some sounds to work with. And because we're really looking at how can we add some sounds to our duck hunt project that we're working on, we're going to want some background music and we'll want some sound effects to work with that. So there's plenty of places where you can go and find free background music. So Incompetech is a great resource. Kevin MacLeod makes fantastic music here. So with that, I am going to go and download one. I've looked through some of these songs. As you can see, they're open. And I'm going to download the itty bitty 8-bit because that's going to fit with what I'm trying to do. Universal Production Music is a subscription service, so if you have access to that, they have great resources. Film Music is another one that has good music, and sound effects, lots of things you can go and download. I'll download from there as well, and we'll see different options that we can download on it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, so all of these, from Incompetech to Film Music, they're free to use with attribution. So we do have to provide attribution. So if we were releasing our project, we'd need to have a credits page and put it in it. Right now, for the purposes of our project, we're going to put that information into the comment tag, or not tag, a comment line in our code, so we can see there it is. Yes, I accept the terms here. We're free to do that. And the nice part is here on Film Music, all I have to do is click and select this, and we can now, with that highlighted, copy it. So then I will make an attribution. I like how it's prompting you on this, so it is trying to keep you honest. Now, we're downloading an MP3, and we're going to talk about this, whether we use MP3s or WAVs or AFF, and pros and cons, because we'll see that there's some issues when we work with MP3s. So we will want to adjust those a little bit. So that gives me some music there. Well, I have the comment or the license copied to my clipboard. I'm going to go into my code file here. I'm going to just paste that in, and we'll just turn those lines to a comment. Remember, you can highlight multiple lines and then Control/ or Command/ if you're on Windows, Mac, Command/ Mac, Control/ Windows, it will comment or uncomment, so that makes it quick and easy. So that, if I use the one from Film Music, we'll put that in, we'll see how that works. Now if I go over to Incompetech, we can see here is the text highlighted, so I will select that. Now we jump back over here into processing, paste that. Once again, we will comment those out. So we're putting the attribution content we need here. If we were completing the project and releasing it publicly, we would need to make a credits page or a credits state. So the same way we have a start state and our game and our win and our lose, we'd want a credits one. And you'd have a little button maybe on the start screen. You could click on that, it'd bring you to a credits page. So you could see, credits for artwork, for audio, etc. So I've downloaded those MP3s. That gives me some music to play with. I'm also going to work on getting a sound effect going here because that's something I want to be able to work with as well. So a fantastic resource for creating sound effects is JSFXR, which is at the sfxr.me URL. And this is a great resource. One thing we do have to keep in mind, and this is super critical, is we do have to pay attention to our sample rate and sample size on here, or our bit rate, because if we don't do that, it doesn't work and processing can't understand it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set all of our sounds at what is considered CD audio quality, or 44,100 kilohertz and 16-bit. So it's really important that you choose 16-bit and not 8-bit, because processing will be unable to open the audio if it is in 8-bit. The advantage of 16 or 8-bit versus 16-bit is your file size is half as big, but because these are so small anyway, doesn't really matter. So we can see how the size doubles when we go up to 16-bit. We go down to 22 kilohertz. Again, we're having it. Now, what's really nice here is we can now get basic kinds of sounds. And these are all MIDI generated style sounds. And, ooh, I kind of like that for... Yeah, I'm going to go with that. It's coming in as a jump, but I'm going to let that be the sound of when I hit the duck or shoot the duck. So I'm going to go with that sound. So we can get all kinds of different sounds. You can play with the settings here, so we can see that if I want this sound to last longer, so every time you move a slider, it adjusts the setting and plays the sound so you can see what it sounds like. Okay, I'm going to go with that sound. So play with the sounds, the settings. You can make all your different sounds. Once you find one you want, you click and download it. Again, if you don't choose 16-bit, when you go to this page for the first time, for me it defaulted to 8-bit. I tried to open the sounds in processing, and processing gave me an error message. I switched it to 16-bit and all was good. So I'm going to now put my sounds into a data folder inside my project folder so that I will be able to work with them in processing. So I've added the files to my project folder. We'll make a new folder here, call it data, and we will put our audio files into that folder. So if we look here, there's the audio files. They're in that folder, so we can start working with them. These are MP3s. That's a wave. We're going to look at how we can convert these MP3s to a wave and why we want to do that a little bit later in this video. But for right now, we have some files to work with, so we can start adding them to our processing project. So with the files in my processing project, we just need to add them to what we're doing. If we just jump over and look at the reference, we see we need to put an import statement. So we import the library into processing. We create our variable to hold it. It's a sound file type, and then we populate that with the file that we're going to work with, and then we can tell it to play or do whatever else we want. So that's all good. So this is the library. We need to import it, but before we can import it, we have to activate it as a tool in processing. So to activate tools in processing, we go under the Tools menu and choose Manage Tools. And under Manage Tools, we're going to see we have different options. So we have tools. You can see these are all third party because they have different names after them, and these tools do different things. They can certainly make different activities work well. If we go over to libraries, we can see libraries that are here. Now I'm seeing a reduced set of libraries because I searched for sound to find it, so I didn't have to scroll through all of it. But here there are quite a few libraries to work with. I encourage you to explore them at some point because they do some really fun things and give you options. But if we go down and find sound, because they're alphabetical. Now I have a check mark next to mine because I installed it already. And to install it, you just click the install button. So now I could remove it and then I could reinstall it. So just click install and you'll be good to go. But if we just remove it, now I click back on sound, we see I have an option to install it. Downloading. And once it finishes downloading, it will be installed and ready for use. Okay, now it's been installed. Got a check mark next to it, so now we can work with audio. So once again, if you want to see, you can click on sound. It brings you to the page. So brings you to the sound page, and you'll see we have analysis, input, output, sampling, sound file that we're working with, effects that we can do. We can add noise, envelopes. So it's pretty big. There's a lot of options here. We can set volumes for the whole sketch when it's running, but we will also be looking at how we can actually tell our sounds to play at a specific volume and work with that. So all the commands that we're going to need are simply going to be under sound file. Now the easy way to get to it, so when you are on the processing page and under documentation, we normally have been looking at reference. This time we're going to look at libraries. And when we go under libraries, there is sound as one of the core libraries. We go into that, there it is. And we are looking for sound file. So sound file is going to be the easiest way to get started once more. So back in processing, I can close my libraries window there, and now it's time to add to this. I could copy paste the things that I need from the help document, but I'll just write them out because it's not that bad. So we import the library so our sketch has access to it. Sound file, capital S, capital F, because it is not a core level class, but it is much like when you make your own classes where we start them with a capital letter. So I'm going to make one for my music, and I will go for my sound effect hit. So we have that sound. So once we've done that, going to populate those. So we'll say music is equal to a new sound file, and then we put in the word this, so we're referencing the scope of where it's going to be. And because it's in the data folder, we don't have to write out the word data, but you certainly can if you want to have a more complete path name to it. And now with this, I'll just choose itty bitty 8bit.mp3 and quotes and parentheses semicolon. So now that populates it. And now if I just say music.play, with that we can run our sketch. Let's see what happens. So you'll notice it took a long time. So the sound did eventually play, but it was like 5 seconds or more before it started playing. And part of the problem that's happening is it's an MP3 file. So what it's having to do, it's having to decode the MP3 file so that it then has the audio data to work with so that it can actually play it. So yeah, that's kind of a problem. I mean, we could build a loading screen, we could have an animation going on and other stuff to distract the user. And if you think about a lot of games you play, you do get those superfluous time-wasting animations that occur, and the reason they're there is they're kind of biding time to distract you so you don't realize assets are being loaded in the background. So we're going to make a wave version of this audio so we have something to work with on it. So to do that, I am going to just right-click on my sound, and I'm going to open with Adobe Audition, which I have running on my computer right now, so we'll be in good shape there. If you don't have access to the Adobe software, Audacity can do pretty much everything Audition can, and it's open source, free. So it works really well. The graphical interface is not Adobe-fied, so if you're used to Adobe stuff, it takes a little bit of figuring out, but once you do, it's an absolutely killer program. But I'm going to use Audition. I open up the sound so we can play it. There it is. Good to go. And what I'm going to do is go and choose Export File. Now when I choose export file, I can see it's putting a name in here. And because I'm doing a wave, all I'm doing is going from, it automatically did _01 because it's like, oh, this is a copy of what's there. So I'm getting rid of that. So I'm just back to the actual name, but leaving the .wave. You do have to make sure that you are paying attention to where it's going to save. So you can just click the browse button. And I am going to go and choose my project folder. I'm going to go into my data folder and save it there. Now, you will notice the file name when we downloaded did have spaces in it. Often when we're building content to go into the web or apps or things like that, we don't want spaces in our file path names, so we would want to get rid of it, camel case it, underscore it, whatever. For right now, while we're working processing, it'll be fine. It doesn't care. We're exporting as a wave. That's good there. And then I want to make sure under my sample type, I'm going to just hit change there and verify. So we'll see we do have different options for our sample type. And once again, we want our CD quality audio, which is 44,100 hertz. And then our bit depth will be 16. If we do these settings, then processing will be happy. If we choose other settings, it can sometimes get grumpy and not work. So once I do that, hit OK. Convert, convert, convert. Perfect. Now we go back into our project and we can see we now have a .wave version. So let's just change this to a .wave. Now run my project. So you can see the sound started playing immediately. There was no hesitation, there was no lag, and it just worked. So that was good. So I'm going to repeat that same process with my other sound. Open that up in Audition. Go under File, Export. We're not doing a save as, we're choosing Export, File, and now it's going to, again, it put the 01 on. I don't want that. And I mean, that's kind of a long name. Realistically, I probably would want to shorten it, but it'll be fine. Make sure 4416. I know it's going into the same directory as what I did previously, so we're good there. Hit OK. And now we have that in my folder as well. Just going to copy that path name. And this time I will, let's go back and recopy that path name. So we can see, yeah, that's a really long name, but it did paste it in. We're there, let's play. And the sound plays immediately. But if we switch to the MP3, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1000. So nearly 4 seconds for the sound to start playing when it's the MP3. So my recommendation will be for your sounds right now, set them to waves, and then they will be able to play immediately. So now that we've done that, that's our background music. Now for my sound effect, let's put a return in here. So sound effect hit is going to be equal to a new sound file for this, comma, and then where it is, and this time I have jump.wave. And I did not put data in just to show you that we don't have to do that. And I've set up in my draw where when I mouse press, it kind of randomly changes my background, so I know a mouse press is happening. And then we'll just tell our sound effect to play. Let's see how this works. So you may notice we have a little problem. We're not getting one sound. We're getting a lot of sounds playing. So that's problematic. So it's playing the same sound. It's starting at kind of every frame we go through. The mouse is being pressed. It starts a new instance, even though the previous one is not done yet. So hopefully your brain is processing that and goes, maybe we need to know if the sound is playing. And if it is, then we don't start playing another copy. We only play the sound when it's not playing. And that would be a good way of logically controlling the playback of the sound. So how do we do that? Well, if we go back into our documentation and look at what options we have there, we will see we do have quite a few options here. We're going to revisit play here and take a look, and notice on play that we do have different options that we can choose here. We can choose the playback speed if we want to speed up or slow down the sound. We have amplitude, or the volume of the sound it's coming back, and then we can cue a sound to a specific position. We can offset it. So we can also, with a mono sound file, pan it left or right. So if we did have a mono sound, we could control that sound, which could be kind of fun, especially if you're, say, building an immersive game and you wanted to create the illusion of sounds coming from one side or the other. So maybe if it's a point of view style game, you're wandering through, a dungeon crawler POV, and then you're, a first person shooter style, and you want sounds from the left or right, depending on where enemies are. You could do that to add to it. You could make the sound change as you move through so that it's left or right to create mood and atmosphere. Lots of awesome things you can do. But playback speed and amplitude or volume are great ones that we want to revisit, and we will do that because we'll probably pull our music down a little bit so we can hear our sound effects more. Now, going back into all of the methods, we'll see is playing. And is playing checks whether the sound is currently playing. Fantastic. So we just want to know if the sound is playing, and if it is, then don't start playing another one. So here we have, if the sound is playing, adds to it, otherwise, gets out of here. So it's just giving us some information. We want to control the instances of playback. So going back into our sound, what we can do is we can wrap it in a conditional, and we can say if so if our sound effects hit is playing equals false, at that point, that is when we want to play. So only when the sound is not playing will our sound play. So let's try again. Our music's playing right away. And I just have that background change going so we know something's happening visually, so when I press the mouse. Alright. So again, remember I said we can play with our playback speed. So if I say 1, play it at its actual speed, comma 0.5. Now if we do that, you can see how the music is playing quieter. Now just for kicks, we'll set our playback speed at 2. Now, one thing you might think about with that is you could adjust playback speed of music so that, say you built levels into your game, each time you replay after successfully completing it, you have a variable you're storing, which is your playback speed for the music, so that each time you go through, it speeds it up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be whole numbers. I can just go 1.5, and that works. So we can adjust that speed. Now we'll see once we get up to, say, something like 3. It does, start to get a little awkward, especially if we look at, say, our itty-bitty 8-bit. So you can really tell how it is chipmunking. But if you compare that to original speed, So you could use your playback rate as a way, storing a variable, putting it in there, making that game. Every time we replay it, the music goes maybe 0.1 faster. So it just adds to that kind of intensity for the player, because when the music's going faster, it adds to your anxiety. It adds to the whole experience. Because remember, you're trying to craft that user experience to create that optimal level of stress and enjoyment that causes people to want to come back and do it over and over. So this is the core of what we need. We have to import our sound library. We have to make variables to store references to our sounds. And just like images, we only create our sound file inside our setup. Do not keep recreating it in a draw loop, because that's going to create 60 versions of it every time, and eventually the memory will crap out. So don't do that. Anytime we're loading things and creating new things, it really should only happen once and inside the setup. And then once we have all of our entities created, our assets loaded inside our setup, then we just use those when we're in our different states of our game. So good luck and happy coding.